All right, we're going to go to Psalm 37 a little bit tonight. A shocking turn of events. Have you ever had a shocking turn of events in your life? Things just didn't go the way that you thought that they were going to go. And we see that here in Psalm 37. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole chapter of Psalm 37. By the time we're done tonight, I want us to have an idea what it's all about, because Psalm 37 has a lot of back and forth if you read the chapter. There's a lot of many verses that talk about how wonderful it seems to be going for the wicked people, and then how it just doesn't seem to go well for the righteous people. And we sit back and we say, that's not right. I mean, where's the justness in that? How is that fair? You know, it seems like sometimes as Christians, like Jesus said, you're going to suffer some persecution, right? Well, why do we suffer persecution when we're doing what's right? When we're doing what's right, why do we have problems in our life? And sometimes it seems like the unrighteous people, everything's going well for them. Well, what's the deal with that? Have you ever wondered that? Well, the deal is explained to us in Psalm chapter 37, and so there's going to be a shocking turn of events, even though sometimes it might look like it seems sometimes like people can do wrong and get away with it. Now, you know that because you probably had a brother or sister that you said the same thing about, right? How come you always do what's wrong and get away with it, and I do something that's wrong and they catch me every time? If you're like me, sometimes you get blamed for what your brother did, okay, right? He did it and I got in trouble, right? I'm not sure that ever happened, but I'd like to think that. Sometimes this can happen on a grand scale also. Huge empires can be built on fraud. You think of a guy by the name of Adolf Hitler. You all heard of Adolf Hitler before, right? Adolf Hitler, of course, is a dictator and a very, very wicked man. And he slaughtered people, but he built this empire. He was a dictator. You think, why didn't God take a man who was so wicked like Adolf Hitler and just destroy him? Or just make nothing work for him? Where, he tried to win an election and couldn't. Why didn't God do that? Why did God let this man win? Of course, in the end, we see he wasn't all that happy with his life, and it blew up. But for a while there, man, he was like on top of the world as far as looking from the outside. And he's a dictator, and he's destroying all these nations. And wow, I mean, he hasn't made, and so many believers, and maybe not even believers, but people that were trying to do what's right, would look at him and say, how come he's being so successful? And he killed many Jews. How many millions and millions of Jews died in that period of time? I wonder how many Jews, God's chosen people, thought, whether they were in the gulags or some kind of concentration camp or hiding for their life. I wonder how many of them thought, here we are, just trying to live, just trying to do what's right. And we're in prison, we're hiding out, we have nothing to eat. And here's this wicked man that does everything wrong, but he's successful. What's the deal? I mean, that doesn't seem to make sense to us. And then some other people do things wrong. Maybe you've heard of a guy named Bernie Madoff. Have you heard of, this is a little more recent, right? Bernie Madoff, he ran this elaborate Ponzi scheme. And a Ponzi scheme, of course, is when you get investors, and then you get more investors, and the second investors you get pay off the money to the first investors, and eventually this whole thing collapses because there's just not enough money to go around. But for a while, man, you're riding high, right? For a while you're rich, for a while you're doing really good. You look at someone who's ripping people off like this and you say, why didn't God stop this? And you say, during the time when he's got all this wonderful stuff, yet it doesn't, I'm trying to do what's right and I can't make ends meet. And I can't pay my bills. It just doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem fair. We see the same thing in politics. It seems like the more wicked you are, the more you lie, the more elections you win. I think many of us, if we're really honest, probably would think I probably could never win a political election. I don't think I could. I'd be lucky to get one vote, and that's mine, right? Because, you want to tell people, you just want to tell people the truth, and people don't want to hear the truth. They expect lies out of politicians oftentimes, and then people cover things up and all this mess. But then they are running nations and cities, and you think, when they're doing all these wrong things, how in the world do things seem to go well for them? And for the people trying to do what's right, it doesn't seem to work. Well, that's the same thing the psalmist is struggling with in Psalm chapter 37. Why is it when we're trying to do what's right that things don't always go well for us, and people that are doing things wrong seem to have it made? What's going on? So we're going to look at this. I'm sorry, Chris, I forgot my clicker again. I got to start remembering that thing. So if I can get you to help me out tonight, I would appreciate it. Let's look at this. The first point on our outline there. It's very simple tonight. A turn of events for the wicked, then a turn of events for the righteous. That's what we're going to look at. So first, we're going to look at a turn of events for the wicked. Now, the wicked, like I said, sometimes it seems to go so well for them, but it's going to change. We need to take a long-term look at this thing. Take a long-term look. Right now, it might look like they're doing well, but we know the end. We can see the end. We can see what's coming, and that's what we're going to look at tonight. So, first under that, the wicked may be temporarily successful. And you're going to see the word temporary a lot in here, because this is temporary. It's only temporary that the wicked seem to be successful. It's only temporary that the righteous seem to fail, because in the end, God's going to get this whole thing straightened out. Okay? The wicked may be temporarily successful. Look at Psalm chapter 37 and verse 1. Psalm chapter 37, verse 1. Do not fret because of evildoers. That fret means to be angry. Don't be angry at them. Don't fret because of evildoers. Nor be envious of the workers of iniquity. Don't get all mad about them. How come they're doing what's wrong and everything seems to go well for them? Don't fret over that. Yeah, that does sometimes make us mad. It just doesn't seem fair. I mentioned this morning how it's time to send Austin to college, right? Never thought that day would come. I mean, when the kids were little, it was like that college is like, it's like decades out there. It's like forever. And all of a sudden, here we are. But it's time to get money for college. And I realized something, and it really makes me mad. And some of you maybe experience the same thing. If you try to be wise with your money through the years, and you don't go into debt, and you don't have car payments and all that kind of stuff, and you drive older cars, and you don't have all the cable TV and everything, and so you're okay financially, you get no help when it comes time to college. But people who wasted and spent and they have nothing, then they get all kinds of help. And it just ticks me off. It really does. And I get mad about that. I don't know, it's kind of an issue of right or wrong, but not quite as much. But you know what it's like to fret? And it's the same thing. It's like, how come people do what's wrong and they haven't made? And I try to do what's right, and it's harder for me. So that's why he says, don't fret because of evildoers. Don't do that, because, hey, life isn't always going to be what you think it should be. So don't fret because of evildoers. Don't be envious of the workers of iniquity. Right now it might look like they're doing well. But look at what it says in verse 2. For they shall soon be cut down like the grass and wither as the green herb. Right now it looks like they're doing fine. Our example of Adolf Hitler, it looked like he was riding on top of the world. Joseph Stalin, same thing. It looked like they were doing so well, but eventually they were cut down. And so, in maybe a distorted way, we can take a little bit of comfort in that. Not that we want bad on people like that, but we understand that God ultimately will reward people for doing what he wants them to do. And we can look at the wicked people and we can say, how in the world can things go so well for them and not for us when we're trying to do what's right? Well, understand, they will be cut down. So we never want to become like them and doing the things that are wrong. It says they're going to be destroyed like grass. Have you ever driven out in the morning, maybe to work or something? You drove by a field and it had tall grass out there. And when you drove back at night, some farmer had come out and cut it all for hay, and it's gone, or it's just laying in heaps. In the morning, it's tall. At night, it's gone. Just that quick, that fast. Well, that's the picture here. One day, the wicked looks like he's on top of the world. It looks like everything's doing well, and everyone else looks at him and says, man, if I was wicked, maybe I could do well too. But in one day, gone, cut down, destroyed. That's the lesson that we have here. We never want to be jealous of the ones who are not doing what's right, because they're going to be destroyed. It says they're going to wither as a green herb. In the summertime, we're in summer now, everything turns green, right? Well, it gets a little dry, then it starts turning brown again, right? But when you get some rain in the spring, things start turning green and start looking so good. You're so happy, that winter time's over. But then it starts to get into fall and things start to die. All that lush green grass and the flowers in the garden just shrivels up. It starts to die. This spring we went out and bought some hanging baskets of flowers, to put on the front porch there. And when I hung up, I realized my front porch never gets any sunlight the way the house faces. But they kind of live, but it didn't take long. They look pretty pathetic. I should take them down, but I haven't. But they look pretty pathetic up there now. And, I look at them and I think, at one time they were such beautiful flowers, but no more. But that's a picture of the wicked. For a while, it might look like they're really thriving, they're really doing well, but God is going to cut them down. So we never want to be jealous. We never want to think, if I would stop trying to do what's right, maybe I could also have rewards like they do, because they are going to be destroyed. Right now, it seems like they're doing well permanently, but it's not. Let's go to the next one. The wicked temporarily hate the righteous. Not only are they doing so well, but they hate us, Oh, that's not right. I mean, we're trying to do what's right, and the wicked people hate us, and they persecute us. Look at verse 12 of Psalm chapter 37. Verse 12. The wicked plots against the just and gnashes at him with his teeth. Have you ever had a wicked person treat you like that? Where they just, maybe not literally gnashing at you with their teeth, but they make plans against you, and they hate you. Well, I see this gnashes at him with your, and just paints this picture. The wicked people are gnashing at the righteous people with their teeth. It just paints this picture of an animal. Maybe you got a dog, or your neighbor has a dog that's just mean. Right? I like to take walks a lot, especially on Saturday night. And when we lived in West Virginia, there was this one spot for a while. These people lived there, and every time I come walking by, that dog would come barreling out of there, and just scare me. I'm out here, there's nobody around, it's me and the dog all night. Never really got close to me. I was so glad when one day I came by and the house was empty and the dog was gone. But you have a dog that's growling, and sometimes the wicked people treat you the same way. On another time, this is when we lived over in Bremen, I was out walking Saturday night, and I came around by we had this park not just close to house ball fields, and there were some woods there right next to a cornfield, not far from where we lived. And I came walking around, and it was dark. I couldn't see a whole lot. It was just barely enough light to walk. And there were some woods about for me to mismarry away. And something was going on back there. There were a couple animals that weren't getting along. And I have no idea. I'd like to see what it was. But whatever it was, something was eating up on something else, and it making the awfulest sound. And I couldn't get out of there fast enough because I had no idea. Could have been coyotes. Was it a raccoon eating a rabbit? I don't know what it was, but it was really something scary. But sometimes you feel like that way here. The wicked, they not only are they being rewarded for being wicked, but they don't like me, and they're causing me problems. Where's God in all this, I mean, when is God going to strike these people down? In Christian love, of course. When is God going to do something about this mess? They're gnashing at me with their teeth. Look at verse 13. The Lord laughs at him, for he sees his day is coming. Now, that's kind of an interesting take on God, isn't it? The wicked cause us problems. The wicked might hate us. The wicked might try to persecute us. And what is God doing on all this? We're saying, God, where are you? Because we're being hurt by the wicked. We're being persecuted. This is terrible. You know what God's doing? He's laughing. Not that he thinks it's funny that his people are being persecuted, but he thinks it's funny that this whippersnapper of a wicked person thinks he's so strong and powerful that he can persecute someone else, because God says, I know what your future is. Now, we understand God doesn't think it's funny that people are going to go to hell and all that, but you get the idea here that God says, who do you think you are? We read about how the wicked people gnash upon the righteous people with their teeth, like the idea of that big dog growling and getting ready to pounce on you and bite you. But God looks at it like that little chihuahua. Does anybody have a chihuahua? I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but it's a poor excuse of a dog, you know what I mean? Like they crossed a rat and a rabbit or something. They come up with a thing, they call it a dog. And there's something about a chihuahua. Man, these little chihuahuas, they think they're big and bad, you know what I mean? And they just do all this, and all it takes is a done. Sorry, we'll edit that out so PETA doesn't come on us, But but you look at it, you say, what can that little dog do to me? I can pick it up and his little legs would dangle, he could squeal, and I can hold him like that. That's the same way God sees the wicked. Who do you think you are? You think you're so big and bad that you can reject me? You think you're so big and bad that you can hurt my people? You're nothing. Matter of fact, in Psalms 2, it says that the wicked they do all these things against God, and it says that he's going to laugh and the Lord shall have them in derision. It's like God is saying, you really think you're that big and bad? You really think you're so strong you can hurt my people? What is wrong with you? Because I know what's going to happen to you. See, we can take some comfort in that because we know that God is bigger and more powerful than the wicked who might cause us problems. I think also of teenagers. They hit about 13, 14 years old, and one day they walk by a gym. They just walk by it, and all of a sudden they think they got big muscles. And they wear the muscle shirts. You ever see a kid wearing a muscle shirt? And he's got spaghetti arms, and they walk around like this. I used to work out in college a lot, and go up in the weight room, and you could tell the ones who hadn't been there. They were freshmen. They come in, and I'm going to get big and bad like some of these seniors that have been working out for 4 years, And you go up there in the weight room, and you got these kids. They go up there first day they're working out. First day. They come walk out of that weight room, and their arm, it's like there's no room for their biceps between their arms, and they're walking like this, And they got no bicep to fill that spot, but they're walking around. And they think they're so big and bad because they worked out one day. And you say, come on, kid, I can just slap and be done with you. That's kind of the way that God feels. All the wicked people, Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, and anybody else you can think of who's wicked. They're nothing to God, right? We say, how in the world can they be so successful? Well, God is allowing it to happen, but God knows what's going to happen in the end. So we don't need to worry so much about them. And that's what the psalmist is grappling with here. And he's going back and forth. God, why do you let the wicked people do so well? Oh, I know, because you're going to destroy them one day. You know what's going on. God hasn't forgotten about his people. So the wicked people hate the righteous, but let's take it a step further. They attack the righteous. The wicked attack the righteous. Keep reading, verse 14. The wicked have drawn the sword and have bent their bow to cast down the poor and needy, to slay those who are of upright conduct. Again, this is written in a time when their weapon of choice was bow and arrow. So he gives the picture here that the wicked people are bending their bow and they're going to shoot and they're going to destroy righteous people. You think of the martyrs, all the martyrs down through the ages, all the martyrs who have been killed because of their belief. It happens all the time, and it happens in places today. They think they're strong, they think they're big. But God knows the end that's going to come to them. So they take their bow and they get ready to shoot at the righteous. But look what he says, verse 15. Their sword shall enter their own heart, and their bows shall be broken. As they go to take their sword and hurt, whether literally or figuratively, they take their sword and they go to hurt the righteous people, it comes back on them. The idea here, God's saying, look, these people aren't going to get away with this. They're going to hurt themselves. How are they hurting themselves? As they are doing these wicked things, they're not stopping to think that what they're doing will bring punishment on them. If they never turn in a salvation context, they never turn to God, they're going to be in hell forever. And if they do things that are wrong, they get punishment upon themselves. They don't understand what they're doing to themselves. As they try to hurt others, it comes back on them. And so we shouldn't sit there and say, how can these people be doing so well? Because we know in the end they're not doing so well. We know in the end they're going to be punished for what they're doing. And here's a punishment. Here's one that we know of. One way they're going to realize they're wrong. Philippians chapter 2, verse 10. At the name of Jesus, every knee should bow. Things in heaven, things in earth, things under the earth, and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. The glory of God the Father. One day they're going to bow to him. Everyone's going to have to do it. Today, they're big, they're strong, they're powerful. They don't need God. But everyone's going to bow to him. And so we need to understand that God sees the wicked people not as strong, but as almost as a joke. Who do you think you are to reject me and to hurt my people? But today it looks like they win because we're seeing it from the wrong angle. But he's saying, no, you know what? The righteous will win in the end. The next one, the wicked only temporarily exist. Now there's some encouragement in that. We're not going to have to deal with the wicked forever. You know that? Not going to have to deal with them forever. Look at verse 18. The Lord knows the way of the upright, and their inheritance shall be forever. God knows about you if you're upright. God knows about you if you're doing what's right. He knows what's going on. They shall not be ashamed in the evil time, and in the days of famine they shall be satisfied. But the wicked shall perish, and the enemies of the Lord, like the splendor of the meadows, shall vanish. Into smoke they shall vanish away. You see this contrast that just keeps showing up? The wicked are only temporary. One day, we're not going to have to deal with them anymore. And I mentioned this a few minutes ago, but I want to go back and just read a little bit from Psalm 2. Psalm chapter 2, because it explains a little bit about what's going on here. It's just a neat way of wording it. Psalm chapter 2, I tried to quote it. Let me read it. Why do the heathens rage? Or why do the nations rage, the heathen? And the people plot a vain thing. The kings of the earth set themselves, the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against the anointed, saying, let us break their bands in pieces and cast away their cords from us. In other words, we're not going to listen to God. We don't need God, really. He who sits in the heavens shall laugh, and the Lord shall hold them in derision. It's like God gets a belly laugh. Not of sadistic pleasure where he's glad these people are going to be destroyed, but I see it as an incredulous laugh. Who do you think you are? You see these little kids, and they rebel against their parents in Walmart shopping line. You know, you always see the stuff in the store. You know, a kid wants a candy bar. Parent won't let them have it at first. They usually give in. But you got this little tiny kid, and they're on the ground, and they're stomping their feet and hitting their fists on the ground, and then they're hitting their mom and dad, and I'll tell you what they need. And you know what they need, and I'd love to help them out sometime. But here's this little kid. What, they think they're going to beat up their dad who weighs 250 pounds? You know, kind of, if it wasn't so sad, you'd laugh at it. I mean, I don't laugh because in 15, 20 years we have a mess on our hands, right? Because they haven't taught that kid something. But, you know, this little kid, what can they do? It's like God's like, in a way, it's like, really? You really think you're that powerful to rebel against the creator of the universe? You think you're that powerful? All I've got to do is withhold oxygen from you just a little bit and you die. All I have to do is just decide you're not going to live anymore. You could die for no natural causes. And you're telling me that you're not going to do what I want you to do? It's really hilarious in a sick way. Why would anybody sin? Why would anybody be wicked? I mean, we all do it time to time, right? But why? How could you rebel? Why do the heathen stand up against God? Why? They don't understand who they are. All right, so that's the turn of events for the wicked. Right now it seems like they're doing so well. But they're going to be destroyed. Well, let's turn it over now and let's look at the righteous. We have a turn of events for the righteous because now as we're trying to be righteous people, we're trying to do the things that are right, it seems like things don't always work well for us, right? And we say, how come things don't seem to go well? The wicked are out to get us and they destroy us. What do we have to learn about us? Now, I'm going to take for granted that we're the righteous, okay? If you've been saved, you're righteous in the eyes of God, and we're trying to do the things that are right. So we're going to put ourselves in this category of the people who are trying to do what's right. We have a turn of events. Right now, it might not go so well. By the way, you know when Jesus told his followers, he said, if you follow me, you will suffer persecution. You're not going to see a lot of that on TV, right? You know, because it's you become a follower of Jesus and everything's going to go well for you and you'll be healed and you'll have money. Of course, you got to send some to me first and then you'll have all the money you want. And you got all that kind of stuff going on, right? That's not what Jesus taught. I mean, his help wanted ad was you come to me, you might die a terrible death. You're probably not going to have a place to live. You're not going to have any money for it necessarily. Maybe you will, maybe you're not, but it's not promised. It's going to be terrible. Who wants to sign up? You know, and most people are saying no thanks. But see, we know that the rewards in the end are much greater than the sacrifice that we have to give. We understand that. And so let's look at the turn of events for the righteous. We'll see how it turns around in the end. Verse 3, the righteous will be fed. The righteous will be fed. Back in chapter 37, verse 3. Trust in the Lord and do good. There's a good definition of a righteous person. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and feed on his faithfulness. Trust in the Lord, do good, and guess what? He gives you the land. Now, you understand here, that David, I believe this is a Psalm of David. Yeah, it's a Psalm of David. He's acting within what he knows in his culture. And in his culture, it's all about the land of Israel. It's all about their land and about God leading his people into their land. And it's still about that for the Jews. And they will get it one day permanently. But it's all about the land. So he says, look, the righteous people, God's going to lead them into their land and feed them. Jews through time have just constantly been dispersed and gone through all of these problems in their lives. And so they always have wanted their land and they wanted to be fed. And David said, look, the righteous people, God's going to lead them to their land. He's going to lead them to the place they want to be. And he's going to feed them. He's going to take care of them. We're not looking for a land in the same sense the Israelites did. But the principle of the thing, the idea is that God is going to take care of his people. God will take care of the righteous people. The righteous will be fed. Number 2, the righteous will receive the desires of their heart. This is an interesting verse, so we got to listen to it carefully, okay? Verse 4. Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. How many times have you ever heard that verse quoted out of context? And meaning nothing about what it says. You trust in God, God will give you that Ferrari. Or that boat, or that healing, or whatever it is that you have a desire of your heart, you trust in God and he'll give it to you. Okay, there's so many ways we could go on that. First of all, what does trust in God mean? We forget that. We just focus on the desire. If I try to be good, God will give me the desires of my heart. Wait a minute here. Trusting in God doesn't mean do a few right things so I get what I want. It means abandoning what I want and trusting completely in him. And then we got to look at the desires of your heart. He doesn't just say, you have a desire. How many of you have a desire in your heart? Your desire is for your team to win the Super Bowl next year. God's going to give it to you. God's got a problem if 2 teams have righteous people on them, right? Who's going to win? That's not what it's saying. It's not saying you do a few things for God and he's going to give you whatever you want. That is not what it's talking about here. He will give you the desires of your heart. You can really look at that phrase 2 different ways. One way you can look at it is you can say you have a desire in your heart and God will give it to you. The other way you can look at that phrase is God will put the desires there that he wants there. And I think that's a little better. But either way, if you truly are trusting in God and you truly are a righteous person, your desire will be what God wants. You might have a desire, but your ultimate overarching desire is that God's will be done. So maybe I want the Ferrari. I really don't care for a Ferrari. If you're going to buy me a car, I give you some other ideas, but let's just use that for an example, right? I want this Ferrari. But you know what? God might not want me to have that because it might go to my head. I might worship this thing. I might love this thing too much. I might skip church on Sunday so I can stay home and wax it. You get the idea here, okay? So I want that, and that's the desire of my heart. But my greater desire is for God's will to be done. So if God doesn't give me the thing I want, this is not a promise. Whatever you want, he'll give it to you. It's a promise if you truly seek him and you really love him and you really trust in him, your desires are just naturally going to be what he wants. And of course, what he wants is what's going to happen. You follow what we're saying here? So don't just take this, God's going to give me whatever I want. That's not what it's talking about here. If you want God's will, you're going to be good, okay? He'll give you those desires. He'll put the desires there, and he'll make them happen because it's his will. But that's what happens with the righteous. And by the way, if you don't want God's will, you're not in the righteous camp. So it's not for you anyway, right? The righteous, God will give them the desires of their heart. But look at the first word in that verse also. Delight yourself also in the Lord. If you want that Ferrari, and you're going to be mad at God for not giving you one, you haven't held up your end of the bargain anyway. You're not delighting yourself in the Lord. You're delighting yourself in this thing you want. So we got to look at all the context here and understand what's going on. This whole idea of, you do a few things, you give some money, or you live in a certain way, and God's obligated to give you stuff. That's not in the Bible. It's just not there. Delight yourself in the Lord. Make his will your will. And then his desires will be your desires, and those desires will be fulfilled. And even if you don't get what you want, you can step back and say, you know what? Obviously, that's not what God wanted for me, so I'm okay. I didn't get the job promotion that I wanted. I didn't get the car that I wanted. I didn't get the house I wanted. I didn't get whatever I wanted, but it's okay because apparently God has a different thing in mind that's going to be better to let his will be done. And by the way, your blood pressure will be so much better if you can get a hold of that, right? Because you don't have to fret. You don't have to worry. You don't have to have all these regrets. You just say, okay, it's God's will. I didn't get what I wanted, but what I really, really want is for God to be happy. That's what we're talking about here. He'll give you the desires of your heart. So the righteous will receive the desires of their heart. Next, the righteous will be successful. Hey, success sounds pretty good. We already talked about success once today in the reproducing disciples. But the righteous will be successful. Look at verse 5. Commit your way to the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. This really follows right on the heels of the previous verse that we were talking about. Just like God's not saying, whatever you want, I'll give it to you. He's not saying whatever plans you make will happen. He says, commit your way to the Lord, trust in him, and he will bring it to pass. Commit your way to the Lord. Once again, if you commit your path to the Lord, you have a plan, but you say, God, this is the direction I'm trying to go, you're free to change it. And if he does change it, you don't get mad at him. Because you want to do what he wants you to do, right? You're trying to please him. So the righteous will be successful in what they're doing because what they're doing is trying to please God. But you have to commit your way to him first. I kind of see it like this, like an editor of an article. If you wrote an article for a newspaper or a magazine or a book, you write a book or something, sometime an editor will come along and they'll say, you know what, the way you worded it, I know what you're trying to say, but you didn't say it. And a good editor can take a not good writer and make them sound good because they say, that's not, what you're trying to say, you didn't say it right, let's word it this other way. And then that writer will say, okay, that's fine. I'm going to submit to what you want because you know best what the readers are looking for. And that's the attitude we need to take with God, right? Hey, God, I'm going to give it my best shot here. If you want to change things, that's fine because you're in charge, right? And if we submit to God in that way and commit it to God, it's going to be successful. Let's continue reading verse 9. For evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait on the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. See the contrast between the wicked and the righteous. For yet a little while, and the wicked shall be no more. Indeed, you will look carefully for his place, but it shall be no more. We're not going to have to worry about the wicked one day. Right now, it looks like they're doing well, but they won't in the future. But the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace. The righteous will be successful. Next, the righteous will be satisfied. Look in verse 18 and 19. The Lord knows the days of the upright, and their inheritance shall be forever. They shall not be ashamed in the evil time, in the days of famine they shall be satisfied. God's going to give his people, his righteous people, what they need. All right, wicked people, they're satisfied now, but they won't be in the future. The righteous people right now, they might be having some problems in life, but God is going to satisfy them. They're going to be satisfied in the days of famine. By the way, this is a nice little rabbit trail that is worthy of taking, I think. Did you say, wait a minute? Let's read into this a little bit. God says the righteous people will be satisfied in the day of famine, which means righteous people will be present in the famine. Psalm chapter 23. Everybody knows it. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. On and on it goes. He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Stop and think about that for a minute. He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. That means that even as a follower of God, even someone who's trying to do righteous, I'm going to have enemies around me. He leads me in the path of righteousness, and he leads me beside still waters, which means there's sometime in my life there's not going to be still waters and green pastures. And so he leads me to these places, and then we leave there and we go back out in the brown, dry fields. Then he leads me by the waters when I need them. To read through Psalm 23, it's not just a feel-good psalm. There's a lot of truth in there. It goes right along with this. There will be difficulties in our life. There will be famine. There will be hard times, but God is in charge, and God will bring his people when they need it. He'll bring them to the right place. There's no promise that righteous people are going to have everything be peachy. There's going to be difficulties. There's going to be problems, so we should not be discouraged. when it comes to that. So in this chapter, we can see the difference between the righteous and the wicked. A few more verses. Let's skip down to verse 35. I have seen the wicked in great power. Man, haven't we seen the wicked in great power? How in the world can people get positions in government when they have such wicked thoughts and wicked worldview? But it happens. I've seen the wicked in great power and spreading himself like a native green tree. Yet he passed away, and behold, he was no more. Indeed, I sought him, but he could not be found. For while the wicked people seem like they're doing so well, but they're cut down. Mark the blameless man and observe the upright, for the future of that man is peace. The contrast here, the wicked seem to do so well for a while, but the righteous will eventually be people of peace. Sometimes we question, is it really worth it to try to do what's right? I mean, you try to do what's right and you get persecution. You try to do what's right and you have problems, and people might not like you. We need to be far-sighted. Short-sighted says, I want to do what's right I want to do what will help me be comfortable now. The long-term approach says, in the end, God will reward the righteous and punish the wicked. I think I want to be on the winning team at the end. When you watch sports, whatever your favorite sport is, your baseball, you come to the end of 3 or 4 innings, and your team's ahead, and you're like, awesome, this is wonderful. And you look at the poor people, on the other team, and they're all moping and they're sad. And you say, boy, am I glad I got my team, right? But then somewhere about the time the 9th inning rolls around, things change. The other team is happy and you're sad. When would you rather be happy? I'd take the 9th inning. Not a big baseball fan, but if I was, I'd be like, I might be sad the whole game. But if my team comes ahead and wins at the end, that's what I'm looking for. If you like football, after the 3rd quarter, your team's behind. That's okay as long as they're ahead at the end of the 4th, you know what I mean? And that's what it is. Sometimes we're in the middle of the game now, and it seems like the wicked are doing well, and we're experiencing maybe some persecution, we're experiencing trouble. But that's okay, because we know how it ends. We know at the end who wins this thing, and that's the team that we're going to be on, so we can deal with some of the stuff we have to deal with. We can deal with some of the problems that come in our lives for being righteous, because we have the promises. We know what's going to happen in the end. We're not going to be ashamed. Let's write this down and we'll be done here. Although the journey may be difficult, our life might be difficult as righteous people, we will ultimately be happy if we choose the path of righteousness. Now, when I got to looking at my notes, I thought that doesn't completely describe what I'm trying to say. Because when I say we'll ultimately be happy if we choose the path of righteousness, I don't want you to think the idea is our happiness, and if we choose the path of righteousness, that'll fulfill our need to be happy. That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is when we get to the end, we will be glad that we chose the path of righteousness. Because in the end, the rewards are great. You got any wicked people that you know of? We've got a little problem with some world leaders right now, don't we? There's a little squabbling going on between the United States and North Korea and all this going on. And whatever you think about the leaders of both countries, you say I haven't heard a lot of people refer to the dictator of North Korea as a godly person. So how in the world can an ungodly person rise to that level? It happens, and God allows it. But we know in the end, the wicked will be destroyed, the righteous will be elevated. So, what team do you want to be on in the end? I think we'd be better off when we get to the end to look back and say, I was in the righteous group. Maybe life was difficult, maybe I struggled with some things, but I want to do what's righteous. So the encouragement is, just keep it up. Keep doing the things that are right. And it might seem like you lose sometime because of it, but in the end you win. Let's bow our heads tonight, close our eyes. We're going to finish with a song here in just a minute. Father, I thank you for the Psalm chapter 37 and how it teaches us that the righteous will eventually win. We're grateful for that, Father, and we want to make sure we're continuing to live righteous, that we're continuing to do the things that are right, even though sometimes it seems like the wicked are pulling ahead, but you're strong and you reward the righteous people. God, if there's someone struggling today with living the Christian life here and just having a hard time with it because it seems like they're trying to do what's right, but things don't go well, give them encouragement that in the end you will reward them for doing what's right. In Jesus' name. Let's stand together, please. If you have a songbook, we're going to finish with